Welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's in fact take a look at some crucial breaking developments that we are tracking. US President Donald Trump has arrived in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and he is slated to give a speech very shortly to Israeli parliamentarians. He signed the visitor's book, as you can see in the visuals over there. And his message reads, "A great and beautiful day, a new beginning." And he's written this in thick black ink, signing with his characteristic sawtooth signature. This, of course, comes amidst the release of all 20 hostages by Hamas. They were in captivity for the last 2 years. The first batch of the 7 hostages have, in fact, they've met with IDF personnel at the initial reception point in Israeli territory. They are slated to undergo a medical checkup very soon. The second group of the remaining 13 living hostages have now been handed over by Hamas to Red Cross, and the Red Cross convoy is on its way to hand over the remaining 13 hostages to the IDF. Now, with us on the broadcast is Mr. Keith Vaz, a former UK minister, joining us. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Quite the landmark development we are witnessing in the Middle East with the hostage-prisoner exchange. We do know now the deceased hostages as well. Their bodies will be handed over later this afternoon. What do you make of this? Trump has stated it's perhaps the biggest deal that he's ever made. Mr. Keith Vaz, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yes, so I was just asking, like, what do you make of what we've been witnessing? Trump has stated that it's the biggest deal that he's ever made.
Well, not the kind of deals he normally makes. We came about to this position because Donald Trump used the presidency's power in order to tell Netanyahu that he had to make a ceasefire, and that was the way of getting the hostages back. So he's used the power of the US presidency in a way that his predecessor did not, in order to bring about this. And I think that's really important. Let's not underestimate the importance of what he has done. The hostage release is a very important issue. But what it does show is that Prime Minister Netanyahu was prepared to listen to Donald Trump in the way that he did not listen to Joe Biden. And that is because this is the same deal that was on the table before Trump became president. But Trump, in his style, and it's sometimes hit and it sometimes misses, this particular case, he's used the leadership in order to bring people together. He's also clearly had the support of the Arab countries, Qatar, Turkey and Egypt, which wasn't there before. You then have, of course, the bombing of Qatar by Israel, which was a mistake. Everyone accepts this was a mistake. And so I think that Trump just said, I've had enough. This has got to end. I've got other stuff to do. And we will not be supporting you, Mr. Netanyahu, unless we have a ceasefire. So his personality and his raw use of American power has demonstrated that actually all along, America has been involved in what has been going on. So there is nothing Prime Minister Netanyahu has done until now which has not had the support of the American government. I think that it is very clear that that is what's happening. The address to the Senate is not, to the Knesset is not in itself historic. Presidents have addressed the Knesset before, but the circumstances afterwards, when he flies to Egypt and signs a deal, oversees the deal. Of course, America says they're not a party to this, but clearly they are, because they provide most of the money for probably all sides in this conflict, in the sense that Egypt and and Israel. And they've finally used their bargaining power and the power that they have of the presidency in order to bring people together. He's invited Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he's invited the German Chancellor, and he's also invited President Macron. That is interesting because, of course, in the past, he has wanted this to be very much his show. He didn't invite them to the meeting with Putin, which was more relevant to the European powers because of Ukraine. But he has invited them to this. So I think he's seeking international cover for what is going to happen. So amazing breakthrough. There is no doubt about that. Everyone has given something. If I was which I'm not, a leader of Hamas, I would have wondered, what on earth did I do on the 7th of October? What has this achieved for the Palestinian people? We have a Gaza Strip that has been completely demolished. We have 66,000 Palestinians who have died. What was achieved by them in taking the hostages in the first place? Frankly, I think that will mean that Hamas will also lose the support of the Palestinian people, if indeed they have the support of the people in Gaza. I don't even know whether they have the support, but they've lost credibility over this as well. I think both the Israeli Prime Minister and the leaders of Hamas have given something up, and therefore it is a victory for Donald Trump. And maybe if this was done a month ago, he might have got the Nobel Peace Prize after all.
Indeed, I'd also like to rope in Dr. Wael Awad, Middle East affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. But of course, now, before I come across to you, we're getting live visuals from the Knesset in Israel. Donald Trump will be addressing very, very soon. And I believe we're also, in fact, getting in some visuals of Palestinian prisoners being released. All in all, we do have the statistics that Israel has provided as well. Israel has emphasized that a total of 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli prisons are expected to be released in the West Bank. Meanwhile, 1,716 Palestinians from Gaza will be released at the Al-Nasser hospital. So that all is the latest information. Trump, meanwhile, slated to address the Knesset very, very soon. But Mr. Awad, I wanted to understand from you, this is a very critical juncture, and a lot of people are also discussing about the humanitarian aspect of what is taking place. There are displaced Gazans who are now returning to their homes that have been reduced to rubble. Hospitals have been raised as well, while the peace plan, the framework, provides for post-war reconstruction. That is a very long, drawn-out process that could perhaps take a decade or so. In your assessment, what are the most urgent needs that must be addressed immediately on the ground?
Well, I think what we need in this issue is first to remember that the Palestinians have been denied the right of existence ever since the division of Palestine in 1948, and the struggle continued, whether it has been throughout the decades over different groups of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or finally it was Hamas who has taken the lead in Gaza Strip to resist the Israeli occupation and extension. So I think that is the right time for the world to recognize a Palestinian state coexisting side by side with Israel and a peaceful existence. And if that is the American plan to achieve that one, then well and good. But if this peace process or the peace plan of Mr. Trump is only meant for a small time frame that it's going to flare up again, which we are getting the feedback, I think that will be a catastrophe for the region. However, what the Palestinians at the moment they may require is a humanitarian aid. We need immediately an infrastructure, the makeshift hospitals, medicines, food. You require the 600 convoys daily in Gaza strips, the food convoys of food and medicine. That was the requirement even before 2 years of the war. And just imagine now with the total destruction, what all you require, and especially after they have suffered winter and they suffered summer and winter at both sides of this on the open, and being bombarded daily with the largest bomb in the world, the maximum number of the total bombing of Gaza has continued more than the two war, more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, more than any war. Total bombing has been bombed totally on Gaza, and yet the resilience of the people to come out now and wanted for their food, they wanted their medicine, they want to live on their own land. I think that is the message we need to require, that they should open the border for them and let them out. The second part, which is paining me a lot, is looking at the prisoners of war that the Israelis have been keeping detainees on Palestinian detainees. Out of the 11,100 Palestinians, still they are sheltered inside Israeli jail. Look at the humiliation, the suppression, the skin of those prisoners by Israel kept. While if we look at the Israelis prisoners, you will see they were maintained with the good health and food, despite the fact that the Palestinians have been suffering. That also gives you an indication that the actual objective of Israel does not want it to see a Palestinian living inside Gaza. Having said that, not only Gaza, is also the West Bank and the whole of Palestine, East Jerusalem and all. So therefore, it cannot be a state for the Israelis, only for the Jews. It has to be a state for the Palestinian Christians, Arabs, Muslims, and Jews all together, as they have been living for centuries. And I think it's a right time the world should recognize this and should see an end to this hostility and the genocide being found and being put on the Palestinian head for more than 80 years.
Indeed, and coming back to the latest developments coming in, we're in fact getting to know that buses carrying released Palestinian detainees have exited a prison in southern Israel, and that's not all. Now, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, the Al-Nasser hospital is now preparing to receive Palestinian prisoners as well. You can clearly see those visuals on your screen. This bus is now heading towards Palestine in order to facilitate the hostage prisoner swap that is taking place. Multiple buses, in fact, are carrying these Palestinian prisoners that Israel has now agreed to free under Trump's 20-point plan, the first phase of which was agreed in Egypt. Of course, all eyes are at the Knesset at the moment, but they'll be soon be trained towards Egypt as well, where this Gaza peace meeting is slated to take place. All right, viewers, live visuals coming in from the Hostages Square at the moment. We can clearly see placards of the 7 hostages who've now been released. People are carrying out their cutouts, they're waving Israeli flags, they're also, in fact, waving American flags. They're elated and monitoring live developments on the broadcast. Still with us is Mr. Keith Vaz. We are tracking these crucial developments, but I wanted to understand what are your expectations from the meeting that is slated to take place in Egypt very, very soon. More than 20 world leaders will be gathering, including Keir Starmer. French President Emmanuel Macron will be there as well. Giorgia Meloni will be present. Pedro Sanchez, who's been quite a vocal critic of Israel, he'll be there on the ground as well. Erdogan, Turkish president, will be present. King Abdullah of Jordan will be on the ground in Egypt too. The main aim is to ensure that the war ends for good and that peace prevails in the long term.
Well, what it shows is that President Trump can't actually do this on his own. It's world public opinion that has brought us to some extent to a position where the American president has decided to listen. And full credit to Donald Trump, because when Joe Biden was in power, he didn't tend to listen to world public opinion. This is a case where Donald Trump has done so. And, you know, he should be praised for that. But winning and stopping the war is one thing. And by the way, in my view, nobody has won this war. This is a war that has caused the deaths of 66,000 Palestinians and, of course, a number of hostages. We don't know how many until we know how many have been released. But this whole process has caused the death of so many people, the destruction of so many people, so many homes, so many buildings, so many hospitals, the hunger of so many people. If, as a result of the signing of this document, and I'm not sure who's going to sign on behalf of Hamas, or whether Hamas is going to be there at the signing of this document, what's going to be left for the people of Gaza? Who is now going to spend the money to rebuild Gaza when Israel has destroyed Gaza with the consent of most of the countries that are there? I remember our own Prime Minister saying that Israel was entitled to do whatever it needed to do in terms of self-defense, which obviously means the genocide that has been committed. If that is the case, then who is going to rebuild? Because you can't leave Gaza in the state that it is. Is Israel withdrawing for good? Is there going to be an international peace force? Are the Arab nations around actually going to be helping rather than sitting on the sidelines? These are crucial questions that will have to be answered after the deal has been officially signed.
We've in fact recently also seen a statement that has been put out by US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. He's in fact praised the United Kingdom's vital role in helping bring about the ceasefire and hostage release, specifically that played by UK's National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. This is a very different tone that has been struck as opposed to Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador to Israel, who slammed Bridget Phillipson, cabinet minister, and claimed that Phillipson was delusional about the UK's role. I want to understand from you, how has the UK been involved in all the negotiations that has taken place in order to catalyze, in order to realize this peace pact?
All nations have been involved. Of course, it was the British that caused this trouble in the first place because of the Balfour Declaration. So to that extent, of course, Britain has to be involved in some way or the other. But Jonathan Powell, I know very, very well. He's a good man and he knows how to negotiate peace deals because he did the Northern Ireland peace agreement under Tony Blair. So if there is praise for Jonathan Powell, I think it is probably well worth him receiving it. And it's clear that he has a very important role to play. But at the end of the day, let's be very clear. The godfather of this deal is Donald Trump. American power is massive. If he tells Benjamin Netanyahu not to do something, the Prime Minister of Israel will not do it. At the end of the day, the American president seems to have a veto over the Israeli Prime Minister. After all, it is the American taxpayers who are paying for most of this. But the issue for all of us is not the fact that we've got to the table now. The issue is who is going to spend the money to rebuild Gaza and who is going to stand back and think, my goodness, how have we wasted the lives of 66,000 people over the last 2 years? You know, it's a tragedy. This is a tragedy, and it should have been ended the day after it began by people getting together and having this kind of discussion on the 8th of October, 2023, rather than 2 years later. We cannot bring back those lives. We cannot save a generation of children. The hostages who have died, their relatives cannot bring them back. This is a tragedy of the making of politicians. Of course, the politicians are there now today, but let's hope we get a plan for the future, not just having a ceasefire. Having the ceasefire is very important, but it's what happens next, who's put in charge, that is very significant. Because as you know, when Donald Trump became president, he talked about turning Gaza into a Riviera, building hotels, casinos, and all those kinds of things along in Gaza and relocating the people of Gaza. I hope he's changed his mind, because you can't just move people out like that. That is where they want to stay. It's now recognized as a Palestinian state by some of the great powers in the world, and therefore we need to get on to rebuild and secure the borders of this state. Two-state solutions. That's what we want.
Absolutely, aptly put, Mr. Keith Vaz. I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'd like to rope in Dr. Wael Awad, who's been waiting rather patiently. Now, sir, much of the world's attention is on Gaza, but structural tensions